All right, as it is 4:30 where I am, and at the half hour, we're going to go ahead and get started with our time today. So we have plenty of time for questions at the end, right? So today, oops, I got to change that date. We are talking about review and test prep because it is the end of the year, which inevitably means end of the year testing and review for students and teachers. So we are going to focus our time today on how to use Formative to help make this a little easier and maybe even a little fun. We'll see. Please feel free to use the chat. We are recording so that this can be posted on our training center so you can go back to it later. And we are going to go for about 30 minutes, but I promise we'll have time at the end for questions. If there's anything that's formative related, but maybe not directly connected to test prep, please feel free to throw that at the end of the webinar, and I will answer it the best I can for you. Okay, so we're going to cover three big things today during our time together. Tagging standards and how that can help make your focus for your reteaching a little bit easier. Self-checking for students, making sure that they understand what they do know and what they need to focus on for some independent study. And then, as always, I have suggestions for you. And if there's time and you want to work on building something out in Formative, we can spend some time at the end doing that as well. All right. I know you have all seen this type of a cycle before, but what I'd like to kind of spend a couple minutes talking about here are what are the types of activities that you lean towards as a teacher. So I know when I was teaching, and I was a fifth grade teacher, one of the things we love to do at this time is like escape room activities or things that really focus on students going back to the content and reviewing and doing a lot of self-checking. So that looked like some partner work or some partner checks, activities that got them maybe up and moving because there's always a ton of energy this time of year. So go ahead and drop some of your favorites in the chat. Quiz shows, escape room puzzles, awesome. Yeah, the hands-on activity is huge, absolutely. Yeah, because it really gets them to focus in on where they are and how to actually craft the questions, right? So that's such a big piece of it, which is awesome. Thank you for that. So what we're going to focus on today is how to take all of those awesome activities and do them informative. So if you have a specific one that I don't go over, feel free to ask me at the end and we can kind of talk through that. But let's go ahead and dive in. So we're going to start with standards because I know when it comes to state testing, it's very standards based at the moment. So we want to make sure that we're tracking standards and understanding where student mastery is with these standards. So if you have not already, in your settings for your account, you can add specific sets of standards. Okay, I have a lot, but you may hopefully only have a couple within here. But if you need to add another one because you don't have any, or you have a new set you need to add, this Add Standards button will bring you to this modal, and you can actually search. I know we had a North Carolina here. And you can actually search through the subjects too. So if we go to math and our math 2020s here, ready to go, and I can add them into my account. And just like that, now when I'm in my formative, I can actually tag those standards to questions and really understand how students are doing on individual pieces. It's really important to take the time to do this kind of upfront so that it's easy as you're building a formative to tag to standards. So I'm going to jump over to a formative example here that has standards tagged in it. And I want to show you the really exciting piece here that has just been released. That's going to make your life very, very easy if you haven't found it yet in the View Responses tab. So within this formative that I gave my students, I now have the option to group by standards. And what this means is that every single question that I have that's tagged individual standards is now grouped in my View Responses tab, which means as a teacher, I can make it really easy for myself to see this standard, we're pretty good on this one. This one's good to go. But you know what? This one right here, this 8GB7, we got some work to do here where I need to go back and do some reteaching, and I can focus my time on the standards that matter most or where my students have the biggest gap. Before, you had to do this by hand to go back through and keep track of which questions were on which standard. You can now do that here in the View Responses tab. So I highly encourage you to use this Group by Standards button within your View Responses once your students have taken the formative to sort it out and see really quickly where there's gaps and where there's growth. It'll show up in both sections, Elizabeth. That's a great question. So it will show in both standard sets. So if question 2 had both of them, both of these two standards, it would be here in this first section and in this second section. The next thing I want to talk about is self-checking, because at this point in time, we're really looking for students to be reflective of their learning, really get them to take some ownership of where they are and where they still need to grow. And so what's really helpful here is in the assign settings is to use these after submissions and return score options. So if you are looking to create an activity with your students where you want them to be able to see right away whether they got an answer correct or incorrect, you're going to make sure that your after submission is kept to either keep visible or allow edits. What this does is it allows students to be able to see their answers after they've hit the submit button. So if they accidentally hit submit and you want them to be able to go back, make sure you have the allow edits on. If you want them to just be able to see but not make changes, this is your friend right here with this keep visible, no edits allowed. If you want them to be able to see their scores right away and whether or not they get the red or the green, this instantly is going to be your option. So if you're just doing a review, you want students to self-check, instantly is going to be the way to go in your return scores. You're going to want to stay away from multiple choice questions and true false questions with this option because students can just click through until they get the green light. So, sprinkle them in occasionally, but it's not going to be something that's going to help students be able to go back and really think about where they made their errors, do some error analysis, and make some changes to their work if you're focusing on just those two questions. Okay. So return scores and instantly, it's going to be a great way to create that self-checking formative that students don't even need to look at an answer key for. You can also set it up where students are submitting when they hit all green. So if you want them to work until they hit all green I'm talking when I say all green here, let me bring that back up so we can talk about what that means in case folks aren't familiar. And green is a subjective. If you have your colors changed, it means different things to different people. But green is talking about at the top. As a student, these will populate as red, green, or yellow or orange. If you get a question correct, partially correct, or incorrect. So I've seen teachers use it where they have some questions. If students are not able to actually find a right answer, they can give some feedback here to the one question that they're asking their teacher a question about and move on. Or you can go for all green. It really depends on your particular situation that you're working on with your students. So I'm going to show you an example of an escape room. I know we have some high school folks here. I know we have some other folks that joined us after we got started. This particular example is set up to be for a 4th or 5th grade math class. Excuse me, the format can be adjusted or the content can be adjusted for whatever grade level you teach. Okay. I'm going to talk through the setup here first, and then I'll show you what it looks like as a student. So in this case, this is an escape room type activity where there's some directions at the front, and then you'll notice sections in the middle here. What this does is it creates a block between different groups of questions and content within the formative. So in order to create a section, you hit the plus sign, and it's in the bottom right-hand corner over here in layout. Okay. You can click on it to title it, whatever you need to title it, and then add questions as normal. You can go back in and add sections later. You don't have to add them all at once, or if you have a formative that you already have, that would be great to set up into an escape room type of activity or partner activity like this. You can go back in and add sections to it now, which is a great way to kind of repurpose some things that you already have. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to toggle on all of these questions to be required. And what that means is that students cannot complete or move on to the next section until all questions are answered, which makes it really great for things like escape rooms where students cannot move forward until they've answered the questions. And if you have it set up where they see instantly whether they have it right or wrong, they can do a self-checking activity. You can have your standards tagged here. It's something fun and engaging for your students that is giving you the information on where they are within the standards without you having to do any additional grading. Okay. So as a student here in my preview, what I'm going to see is at the top, I'll see the sections blocked off. You'll notice I can't click forward here because I have not answered the questions in section 1. So it will not actually physically let me move forward until all of these are answered. Okay. My instructions are at the top here. I'm just going to put these answers in so we can see what it looks like to move forward. And now I can move on. Okay. I'm going to showcase one other place right now that you can go ahead and find some really great opportunities for saving yourself time. Yeah, the required question button is like a game changer to be able to make sure that students are moving forward in a way that's going to make the most sense. And that they're really focusing on answering the questions before they move forward or mastering content before they move forward. That required button's great. With multi-questions that are grouped together, absolutely, it's a great way to kind of help chunk things for students in content or instruction pieces or in just a longer exam or assessment. Great. Oh, that's great. I'm glad you guys have used this. So while it's all wonderful to have these great plans about creating these wonderful formatives that are super engaging and exciting and wonderful, the reality is it's a lot of work and a lot of time sometimes to put this together. The library is great if you know what to search for here. So what I found is that if you search for study guides, what you can find as like your keyword, you can find some things here that are a great starting point for you to kind of either add sections in. So like this one may be a little bit, where was it? This one may be a little bit of too many questions all at once, but you could chunk it for students with the sections. Or you could, just pick 1 or 2 of those questions and pull them. So using a study guide as your searching tool or your searching term within the library is a great way to kind of find some formatives that are review-based and that can be easy to kind of splice for yourself and make what you need it for your students. The other thing I found is if you do like a certain topic and review at the end. So if we do like science review, and I know that's super general, but you'll be able to see more subject specific or topic specific review activities that you can then create or use, or if they're ready to go, just grab it and use it for your students, whatever works best. We used to have a saying at my old school that it was, if you weren't stealing it from somebody else, you were working too hard to try and reinvent it. We had a really great community of sharing. And I know that this library, there's a lot of great gems in here for people to pull from and save themselves some time. Okay. The other piece is if you know there's specific standards that you're looking for, you can always search by those standards as well. Okay. So there may be, let me get out of the science review here. You can always search by a specific standard or strand and see anything that's tagged with that standard. Again, to help keep things really simple for yourself as you're moving and creating content. This is an example that's set up that I used some of our new question types that just came out. one of which is an updated drag and drop. And I know that drag and drop is one of those technology enhanced questions that shows up a lot on different assessments, state assessments, end of the year assessments. So we now have within our drag and drop question, 2 different options. You can add text as we have been doing what it's been previously, or you can upload a background image. Okay, so in this case, I uploaded an image of a plot diagram, added my drag and drop areas here by clicking, and then added my answers underneath here. I created my answer key by just dragging the answers or the answer choices into the correct spaces. And now this is an interactive question type that is very similar to what students can see on an online exam, and they can interact and practice that drag and drop motion in the same type of question. Okay, so that's brand new. I think that dropped last night. So super exciting to add that into some of your review opportunities. It's auto-graded and tagging to those standards, again, keeping it super simple for you to get the data you need. Matching is another one I know that's on a lot of those TEI questions. Yeah, so definitely kind of looking at some of the maybe longer form questions that you may have on old review sheets and adapting them into a matching question like this that, again, auto-graded partial grade so students can really work through what they don't understand. But it's really that practice of manipulating things on the screen to make it work for what you need it to work for. Okay. All right. That is really the end of kind of the big topics that I wanted to talk about. Does anybody have an activity? I know there was a few that were up here that we talked about or that people mentioned they did. Puzzles and stations. Stations, again, is a great way to utilize that the section piece. I don't know that I would add the required component to it, depending on where students or how students are moving through your stations. But again, it's a great way to kind of chunk that material into groups that makes it easy for students to work through multiple pieces at once. Is there anything that you all are looking to do with Formative that you haven't been able to figure out how to do that would be really helpful for this time of year? An activity, an assessment type, anything like that? Yeah. Go ahead and drop it in the chat if there is. And while we're waiting to see if anybody has any of those, I'm going to talk through just a couple of places for you to find some more information. The Formative support button in your account is a great way. If you ever are running into any issues, definitely drop in and check that Formative support button. Our support team is here to help and will work to get your problem or issue resolved very quickly. So it's a great place to start if you can't figure out what's going on. The training center where you signed up for this webinar is a great place to check out any self-paced trainings that we have. This webinar will be posted next week, so you can come back and take a look at it then on our training center. And then our help center has really quick tips and tricks to make sure that it's super easy for you to get your questions answered and solved, because we don't want you to be spending time trying to figure out where the answer to your question is. We want you to be able to be working with students and spending time with them as is this time of year and all times of year. So there's some places to look if you have questions. And have a wonderful rest of your day. I hope you all have a smooth rest of your school year and enjoy the rest of your week.